I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning in to Monday Night Live with Dr. Rita Louise. And I should take this earbud out because all I do is hear myself in my ear, which is a little weird. So anyway, okay, we're going to have like a good show today. Not like last week where it was like everything was blowing up. But it's going to be good this week. See, I have that beautiful flower behind me because it's spring and the birds are out and it's flowery. I'm in a flowery kind of mood. But today we are going to talk about our inner world. And you might be going, our inner world? What? I've never really heard anybody use that phrase before. But that's why we're going to talk about it. And most people don't pay attention to their inner world because no one even suggests or teaches them that there is really any importance or value to it. So what is our inner world? Our inner world is what is going on inside of us. It's our thoughts and our emotional reactions, both of which can create or cause us to take certain behaviors, but it's really all about what's going on inside. What am I thinking in this moment? What am I feeling in this moment? And so today I want to talk about, and kind of in general, I only have so much time. So this is kind of like the soft brush across the screen, talking about the thought portion of our inner world. And it's important to know that in order to have an emotional response, there has to be a thought preceding it. So the example would be you're driving down the road, la, 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 and some idiot cuts you off. And the next thing you know, you are screaming and yelling at the person, having a bit of road rage going on. Or you could be driving down the road, la, 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 and somebody cuts you off. And instead of going into this very reactive place, you can wave them on. And you can have both experiences on the same day, in the same drive. But it all starts with that thought. The thought sets off the emotional response. The emotional response can trigger an action. A thought can trigger an action, but it's all about the thought. But when we sit there and look at our lives, or how do I want to say this? The difference between people that are happy and people that walk around miserable all the time or don't find joy in their lives all depends on what is going on in their inner world. And that's really why I wanted to talk about this today, because one of the things they also don't tell you is that we can change our relationship with our inner world, thus changing our relationship with the world around us. Oh, it's like I feel like I shared like this profound insight that no one ever talked about, but it's just so simple and so basic. Okay, it's not super simple and basic to implement, especially once you're older. I think if you were a little kid and you were trained in this and worked with this, it would be so easy and there would be no struggle in implementing these changes because it would just be part of who you are. But now that we're all old, it's a little bit more challenging. So I'm working on a new book that really focuses on what's going on inside and how to interact with it and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and I found a very amazing statistic. When we sit there and we look at our friends or acquaintances, we often assume that they're happy, or that their lives are going way better than ours because ours totally sucks all the time. because that's just how it is. And obviously, they are more famous, more successful, have more money. They have, well, we don't. Well, what the study found was that 80%, yes, 80% of our thoughts are negative. And so it only makes sense that most of us walk around unhappy all of the time. But why are we unhappy? Because we are carrying negative thoughts. And so I want to talk about the three that I've written about in the book. And then one, I kind of had this little epiphany this week, which is a little bit my pattern, but I'm sure that my pattern isn't all that unique. So the two primary kinds of unhealthy thoughts that are often referred to is worry, where you're constantly thinking about, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? I have a couple of clients, one in particular that I like to use as an example and kind of pick on. She'll have a headache and I'll get this phone call going, well, I might have a brain tumor. That's worry. And it's a pretty extensive state, you know, but worry is always thinking about the future with what if in the foreground. Then there's rumination. Now, me, professional ruminator, I'm really good at it, although I have been remarkably better at not ruminating because I have been for this past year really implementing this material and have found it to be magnificent. But when you're ruminating, you're thinking about a past event, your boyfriend, your girlfriend does something, or your boss does something, and you spend like a week thinking about, well, why did they do this? Well, I should have said, or, I should have walked out the door, or I should have, and there's always this replaying of the details over and over and over again. And in both situations with worry and rumination, there is this incessantness to it, which sometimes can be very hard to break free of. There is another one that isn't considered an intrusive thought according to the mental health community. I consider it intrusive thought because so many are plagued by it. And that's our inner critic. And I think I'd like to do a show on our inner critic. So I'm just going to touch on it. But our inner critic is that mean, nasty voice inside our head that tells us we suck, or we have fat thighs, or we have bad hair, or when we look in the mirror and we're like, oh my God, that's our inner critic. Now, we can have that critic that applies itself to other people, but the one that is the most destructive are the really mean and vile things we'll say to ourselves that we would never, ever, 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 ever say to somebody else, because our inner critic is merciless. But as I was saying a little bit earlier, something that I just noticed this past week. I noticed it this week, but I've been in this behavior for a few weeks. And so, I was preparing for the filming of Ancient Mysteries #5, and I was in a bit of a rabbit hole working on that, and I was okay with it. And actually, it felt really good to really dig and work, and I was really excited. And so I gave myself a pass on that. But then when I got back, I decided I wanted to do some work on my webpage. And I have to tell you, I've been like really sucked in. Now there's this part of me that is really enjoying it. I really love creative projects and solving problems. And trust me, doing webpage design is a problem solving mystery by itself. But it's been overwhelming. So in this past, year or so, I've really, well, actually it's been more than a year, have really been paying attention to the negative thoughts, the worry, the rumination, the inner critic, and addressing that. But I haven't ever had the opportunity to even stop and look at, well, what about that like obsessive kind of workaholic thought process that, makes you stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure something out or solve a problem. But the way that you address that, the way that you get out of that, because it kind of leaves you in a cycle of anxiety, where you're just constantly going and going and thinking, and there's this non-stopness to it. And you can experience the same thing when you're in a heavy duty cycle of worry or a heavy cycle of rumination. I call it the rabbit hole, but I never really put that title to the work rabbit hole. So I am actively working on that personally. Um, but the goal in all of this is to be in the present moment, to be here now, and being able to interact with the world on a regular, on a this is what's going on basis. So, for example, when I'm doing this show, it's like you cannot do this show not being in the present moment. You can't do readings for someone when you're not in the present moment. You can't do energy work when you're not in the present moment. Now, you can drive your car. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do on autopilot, and not be in the present moment and survive just fine. But my choice is that I want to experience more of the now and less of the living in my head. And people that have issues sleeping, um, many times there's so much energy stuck in their head because they're worried, or they have anxiety, or they're ruminating, or they got some project going on, or whatever it is, whatever that thought process is in their mind. If they can learn to quiet that down, the chances of them sleeping better will go up. And so we've kind of talked about this before, and uh, I'm just going to really mention it because I've been kind of talking a while. But things that you can do, or you can look online or YouTube, I'm sure there's plenty of information. But things that you can do to stop the thought process and bring you back into the present moment, are things like breathing. And I know that we had talked about breathing and doing the 4-7-8 breath. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. And doing that several times will help calm things down, make you focus on that versus whatever else you were thinking of, and hopefully break that cycle of thought. You can do things like meditation, whether you're doing that by yourself, whether you're doing it in a group, whether you're listening to a meditation uh, video again on YouTube. You can go to the gym and work out. When I've been going to the gym lately, I've really been focusing on my breathing, so I'm more present in my exercising. There are so many different mindfulness tools that you can use to help you. But I want to throw one little other piece in. Sometimes you get into this place where your brain is going crazy. You're in your rabbit hole, you can't get out. You've meditated, you've tapped, you've taken a hot bath, you've talked to friends, you've gone to the gym, you raked the leaves, you cleaned the bathtub, you've done all of these things, and nothing has changed. And when you find you're putting so much energy into trying to change something, trying to fix something, then it is time to just stop and surrender and just accept, okay, this is where I am right now. And it's time for me to just love myself, or love myself a little bit more. And so that's all I'm going to talk about my inner, or your inner world, our inner world, the inner world. Yes. And so before I go look at the questions and stuff, I just want to remind people, if you'd like to schedule a private consultation, please visit my website, soulhealer.com, and it's getting an update. All right, a minor-ish update. That should be done no later than the end of this week, but then I'm going to go through and do a pretty major redesign, but I'll keep you informed of that because I'll probably be going crazy before I'm done. You can like me, okay, not friend me, but like me, Dr. Rita Louise on Facebook. Look for my bright, shiny, smiling face, not the poodle with the tinfoil hat, but Dr. Rita Louise. And you'll get notified of upcoming Monday Night Lives, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Just Energy Radio on YouTube. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to switch screens and see who's here and get going. So Bradley George is here. Hey, Bradley. Man, I thought there were like a million people in here, but it's mostly you. Oh, and we have BDWHQ, who I figured was working tonight, but I guess not. Okay, so negative self-talk. Okay, so Bradley's here. Corey, hey Corey, how's it going? Thank you for stopping in. Hey, Miss Cindy and Gabby, girl. Okay, so Bradley asked negative self-talk. Yeah, I mean anything that you internalize about yourself would be considered negative self-talk. It's interesting. There are so many times where we will sit there and allow ourselves to be really mean to ourselves and are challenged to shift the narrative. But one of the things that happens is that in our brain, we have, and all right, so I'm hoping I'm going to get this right. We have neural peptides. I don't know. Anyway, but they work like a lock and key mechanism. And so on the cell surface, you have the lock, and these neuropeptides are the key. And so when the key gets plugged into the lock, it unlocks a cellular activity. But if you have a lot of negative, toxic thinking happening, you're releasing a lot of like cortisol and, stress-filled hormones into the body. And the body goes and starts creating cells with more of these locks on them so that these keys have somewhere to go. And so until you start sitting there and shifting your thought process and having more gratitude and saying thank you and finding the lessons in challenging situations, finding the good, even if it totally sucks, but you can find one good thing, it will shift the energy on something. Will start to make it so that when your cells reproduce, that the number of locks on the cell that open up with like negative thoughts start to diminish, and the ones that unlock with positive thoughts will increase. So I think that that's like, I mean, when I heard that, I'm like, wow, we're like totally programming ourselves to be screwed up and negative, but we can change it. I mean, that was the whole thing. It was like, we can change it. We have the power. And so if you find yourself trapped in negative thinking, because many times that negative thinking starts in childhood and we just assume that that's who we are, and that's how life is. And, everybody sucks and everybody hates me. But once you learn that you can change it and change that dynamic, it makes all kinds of things possible. So yeah, negative self-talk. So Corey, thanks for coming. I hope you have a question for me. Okay, so hey, Miss Veronica and Nina, hey also. All right, question. I had a Canon Rebel camera in olive green backpack. I moved a couple times and don't know what happened to it. Can you locate it? Veronica, you think I'm just like the psychic of all trades. I mean, I'm feeling like it's in a box somewhere or in like a bottom drawer underneath some stuff that when you were like unpacking, you just kind of shoved it in there. Finding stuff is really not my thing, But if you find it, in a box or underneath a bunch of stuff in a drawer, let me know. Okay, so let's see. So Ron said that. Okay, so Veronica has another question. Can parasitic infections affect thoughts? Like maybe after trauma, the creepy crawlers find a home. Hey, Terry. Okay, so interesting question. So when you experience a lot of trauma, um, that can really affect your immune system, which could open the door for more parasitic infections because your immune system isn't working as actively as it could or it should. I have heard some information that parasites can affect your thoughts, but I don't think it's like, the parasite is in there and it's going, hey, Veronica, go speed your car or go steal that or go bop that person over the head. I don't get that at all. It's much on a much more subtle level. Um, and that's why it's so important to keep your immune system high because when we experience a lot of stress in our lives, it really impacts our immune system. So, yeah. Okay. So, Terry, if you have a question, Nina, question, Robert or Liz, question. Okay. Wow, Corey, you have a question for me? How exciting. Okay. Uh, Okay, so Corey, I just get the impression that you have already started lifting your roots. That's the way I like looking at moving is, you've started energetically making the transition, whether you have packed a box or really done anything. But I feel like your attachment to your current place is getting less and less. And they keep telling me like 3 to 6 months, and I feel like there's a lot of um, happy, excited energy on your part that is kind of tied to this potential move. And there's other stuff that I could add, but I'm not going to share that on air, assumptions that I could make because I'm just not that way. So cool. So if you have a follow-up question to that, please ask it. So we have Claude Jolie, long time no see. Hey Claude, if you have a question, please post it below. Um, I'm just seeing if I missed anybody. Nope, I don't think so. So if you're just getting here in the opening, Vesta, Vesta. Girl, you got a question? Ask it. All right. So Claude asks, is it the year for contact? Okay, so I'm assuming that you are meaning like extraterrestrial contact versus like you can leave your house because there's not some pandemic going on. Um, Well, as I'm sure the military has already, or the government has already come out and said that, there are extraterrestrials and, okay, they've more like said, okay, there are extraterrestrials, because they're really not saying that very loud. But it's been put out, the news just hasn't covered it. But I'm not getting it. I'm not getting that there's going to be this overt, craft landing on the White House lawn kind of thing. I mean, as we all know, it's like they've been in contact with people for a really long time. And so why would they need to have this really overt thing. I think it's more a matter of us saying, oh yeah, they're extraterrestrials, and there they are, and not having people look at you like you're crazy. So hope that makes sense. Follow up if you want, please. All right. So we have Joe from Dallas. So if you're looking for a house in the White Rock Lake area, message Joe because he is realtor number one. And if you're selling a house, doubly call him because if there's any issues with that property, guess who he calls? Me. So it's all good. Anyway, hey Joe, love you. Hey Dave. Man, we're having just a fun house tonight. All right, so Vesta wants to know health. Am I in danger? Uh, okay, so Vesta, I will usually put things, health related things, um, in three different categories. Like, well, four. I don't see anything. Um, I see something, and yeah, you might want to pay attention to it, but it's not screaming at me. Then it's screaming at me. And then there's like, you need to go to the emergency room right now. And Vesta, I am a bit concerned with what's going on with you. So yes, it is something that you should really put your attention and focus on. Um, and this is totally up to you if you would like for me to dig into this a little more. If you could just put, like a little more, we have a lot of body parts, but, and I'm not feeling like I'm picking up your emotional energy. I'm feeling like this is what your body is saying to me. So if you could, if you want, be a little bit more specific and I can be a lot more specific back, especially if you like point to a body part or a system or whatever, because, we have a lot of body parts and only so much time. Okay. Oh, all right. Let's see, where was I? All right. So, Joe, I'm going to come back to you because Vesta already responded to me. So she said heart. Hang on. That looks okay. Uh, okay. It's interesting because, your stomach is lighting up for me as well. So when I look at your heart, and this might sound really weird, but I feel like what's going on with it is something that is very fixable. Um, and if they recommend, and I don't even like saying this out loud, but if they recommend doing surgery, then you should say, okay. I feel like it's very fixable. I feel like it's very survivable by you. I mean, on some levels, you're kind of healthier than a horse. Um, but it does need your attention, and it's to the point where medical intervention would be appropriate at this point in time. Okay, so if you have another question about that, please, do ask. Okay, back to you, Joe. Okay, he said the friend you helped us in Albuquerque is doing so well. It's a miracle. He is home now and walking. Woo-hoo. Oh, thanks for the plug. Well, that's because he's like realtor. I don't know. Number one in the Dallas area, White Rock Lake. Anyway, Joe, that is just so good to hear. And so, Jonah, I'm going to say, have a mutual friend who was kind of in a bad place several months ago, and I was doing some work with him and his family, and it was kind of scary, but he's home and he's doing good. So yay! Send my love to them. Okay, Joe. Okay, so we have Lucky Feliciano. Hi, Lucky, and thanks for joining us today. All right. Hey, Dr. Rita, I had a woman from France that goes by Mariana Reyes, supposedly said she would give me a gift of an inheritance. Is this true? I mean, did I have a dream? I was in France. Okay, so Lucky, so I'm reading your I'm reading your message and it sounds like, just some really bad spam email that says, "Hey, Lucky, I'm the banker for Mariana Reyes and you've inherited $30 million. Here, just send us your details and your banking information and we'll get it right to you." Um, so I don't know. My feeling is when I read what you wrote, that it has spam, phishing, scam all over it. So maybe you could be a little clearer because that's what I'm kind of getting from your message. Maybe that's how you feel about it. I'm not really sure. Okay, so Vesta's back with another question, and she wants to know if I get my teeth pulled, would it help? I should have put that all in one post. No, 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 Vesta, you are so fine with that. I'm not feeling like it's going to. Okay, hang on one second. Hmm. I mean, I feel like there would be a 25% benefit by having your teeth pulled, but I don't feel like it is going to address the underlying issue. When I look at your teeth area, I'm just kind of getting the impression that there's just been like a lot of inflammation, maybe some infection going on, and maybe it would be more conducive to address those things. And when dealing with anything in the mouth, just a FYI, taking oral antibiotics, taking oral anything, in my experience working with people, they don't really work. And you really need to do things where that you're putting on the gums or doing some kind of like mouthwash rinse, with healing herbs and antibiotic herbs to, clove oil, antibacterial, antimicrobial, um, to help heal that tissue because for some reason the blood vessels don't go there. I don't know. You know, it's like if people get have a root canal and they get a dry socket and it gets inflamed, they take antibiotics and it doesn't do a thing. You sit there, you put clove oil on it, and it takes care of it topically. So when everyone is having any kind of teeth issues, I recommend doing things. Again, an herbal mouthwash. That you can use oils or teas or whatever, and or put it onto the gums. Okay. Okay, so Lucky says she never asked, so this is about the scammy person. She never asked any questions. I gave her my address. Well, Lucky, I hope you only gave her your address and didn't give any banking information or anything, but even just giving your address, it still feels very scammy to me. I don't know. But if she sends you like a whole bunch of money, I hope you'll share it with me because that would be really cool for me. Anyway, all right, Claude's back. Okay, about reading, can you try to read me? If it requires too much energy, it's okay. We can do this another time. Okay, Claude, so this is how it works here on Monday Night Live with Dr. Rita Louise. Is you have to ask a question, and the question can't be, can I get a reading? So if there's something that you want to know about, find out about, whatever, like Vesta asked a fairly specific question. Even in her more general question, it was still fairly specific. So you ask a real question, not about dead people, not about predicting the future, and I'll be happy to ask. And it never requires too much energy because this is what I do. And actually, I do a lot of psychic fairs and conferences, and there are days that I literally don't get out of my chair for 3 to 4 hours at a time. And people are like, God, you must be so tired. But really, I'm energized. Okay, my butt hurts, but I'm really energized about everything that's going on. And so it doesn't really require a lot of energy. Okay, so Vesta wanted you to know, Lucky, that if you wanted to contact her, her job requires her to constantly train on scams, and so she can help you identify whether it's a scam. But it sounds like a scam, but it sounds like you already gave into the scam, so it's kind of a moot point, in my opinion, at this point in time. All right, Miss Terry. Questions about paranormal things going on here at my house. Lay the question on me. Be a little bit more specific, Terry, because I only have finite time. So be a little more specific about what kind of weirdness is going on at your house, and I'll be happy to look at it. Because I don't have an issue of sending my energy to your house and looking at your ghosties. But if you want me to like talk to grandma or whoever, then I have to bring them to me, and I don't want them in my house or my energy field. So it sounds like it's the same thing, but it really is different to me. So Claude, I'm still waiting for your question. Terry, I'm waiting for your more specific question. Let's see. Oofy, no questions for me today. Dave, no questions for me today. Corey, thanks for the questions. Here, I'm scrolling back. Bradley, if you have another question, I did appreciate the negative self-talk thing. All right. La, 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 la. Ooh. Okay, so Veronica wants to know if EMFs in her apartment are affecting her negatively. Oh, okay. Okay. So, Veronica, when I look at that, I feel like the EMF in your apartment is pretty average, pretty standard to what you would find in most homes. Excuse me. So I don't feel like it's over the top. Now, with that said, I mean, you are pretty sensitive to that energy, and so I feel like, short of not having any electrical, in and around you, you are going to be affected by it on some level. Um, and I think the first time that we met, you were in a place that had really bad EMF. And this place, I mean, it seems okay. It seems average. If it was over the top and it was too much, I would definitely make that comment. But it seems, it reminds me of when I sit there and I talk to people about their diets, and so there's what I would consider a really clean diet, and a really clean diet is reflected by the level of toxicity someone carries in their body. And so I consider a not like a sort of clean diet being a clean diet because we're in America. And it is, I mean, I've been doing medical intuition work for, over 20 years, 25 years. And it is very rare that you see somebody's body that is really clean. Even if they eat organic, even if they really try, there always is a certain level of toxicity. And it's because we live in the United States and we live in a toxic world. And so kind of the same thing with your apartment. We live in the United States. This is just how it is. And finding someplace that doesn't have that level of EMF. I mean, you would have to really kind of go off the grid out to the nowhere to be able to control and monitor what's going on there. Okay, Veronica? All right. So Claude wants to know, is there an advanced civilization living on Earth that we are not aware about? Okay. And so a lot of my research, if you've been following my work, has really come from, the mythic record and looking at what cultures around the world have said about the Earth and the inhabitants on Earth and stuff. Um, and based on that, it seems to me that it would be entirely possible that there are, quote unquote, advanced civilizations, but advanced civilizations in their own way, not necessarily, they have an iPhone, or whatever, living, in the earth, or under the waters. It only makes sense that the people that were there, the groups that were there, not necessarily human, are still there. I don't really feel like that would change. When all of the crazy was going on the planet, and you sit there and I'll say, listen to the news, and your head is spinning because it doesn't make any sense. Um, my ongoing commentary was, it would be easier to believe that there is a group of reptilians living in underground bases than to believe that humanity is doing what it's doing to humanity. I just find it overwhelming, and unimaginable that we would do this to ourselves. So yes, I do believe that there are advanced civilizations, again, not necessarily human, that live in the bowels of the earth, as well as the extraterrestrials that are out there. I mean, they're well documented in ancient literature, and they were visiting us before, and I don't see why they would have stopped in the present. Okay. Okay, so Bradley has a question. I'm not quite sure I totally understand. I have an admirer. Cool. Uh, but the feeling is not mutual. I need to rid myself of the less. So I'm not quite sure what the I need to rid myself of the less is, Bradley. Um, I mean, I don't think that it is, I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. I don't think that it's wrong or bad to have an admirer, as long as you are clear with this person, what you want, what you need, what you expect, what they shouldn't expect, from you. You know, I think that that's fine. It's when it's ambiguous, unambiguous. Yeah, it's when they don't really know, and they can build stuff up in their head, to the contrary. That's when it really becomes a problem, And so I think if you're fairly clear with this person, or don't give them any reason to think otherwise, that there might be something more that could happen, then I think that it's okay. And if it's weirding you out and making you uncomfortable, then, maybe you need to just make separation from that person. So, okay. All right. So Terry is back with a long question, and hopefully this is all in here. Okay. Just wanted to know before I asked. We moved in 3 years ago. I've been around paranormal all my life, and no matter where I go, activity happens. After we moved in, several times there has been banging on the back door in the middle of the night. I've seen a dark figure and got a strange bright orb on video one night. One area of the yard seemed especially creepy and dark. See, I don't buy places that are creepy and dark ever. Inside the home, it doesn't happen much, mostly the back area. Huh. And it's not a Bigfoot. I mean, if we're gonna get into this, might as well bring everybody in, chupacabra, whatever. Okay, hang on, Terry. Let me take a look. Okay, so when I look in your backyard, I mean, there's just this one kind of really hot spot that is off to the side, kind of near your property line, but not all the way to the back. It's like half to three quarters of the way to the back. Um, I mean, it does have kind of a dark, heavy feeling. It doesn't feel like it's a friendly ghost per se. I am kind of feeling like there might be a little vortex right there as well. Um, I don't feel like, I mean, one, I don't get the impression that it comes into the house. Um, and so if it doesn't bother you, then it should be fine. I mean, I don't get the impression that that entity, that spirit is tied to you. Um, okay, and actually, all right, where am I time wise? All right. All right, so I don't know how many questions I have left, but I got 10 minutes. Okay, so one of the things, I mean, pretty much every place that I've lived in has had some kind of activity. But Terry, it doesn't mean that you are taking the activity with you. It is, I think, more because you're aware that you could have activity, that you're more sensitive to noticing, identifying, validating that activity is happening in your location, and not that it's following you. I mean, whatever this thing is, it is definitely tied to the property. Um, yeah, it's definitely tied to the property. But I would say, all right, I have to sit here and think about this. So that house, well, definitely that house. I mean, so I would say over half of the houses that I've lived in, either growing up or in my adult life, had spirits of one kind or another, but I already had my own attached entity, and I can differentiate between like my own spook that I carried around and ones that came with the house. And so I think that you just are aware of the ones that come with the house. Like the house I'm in now, there's two ghosts that live here, and they don't bother me, thank God, because, Terry, I make sure that there's not like funky, creepy energy, because then I make sure that I don't have like funky, nasty ghosts hanging around. But if they're staying outside, then stay out, have them stay outside. Um, okay. And one of the other things you can do is you can set up some kind of a grid, like if there's a porch there, either with like copper wire or with crystals, and set up an energy grid, not an electrical grid, obviously, to protect that back part of your house. So you might be able to create some kind of buffer between your back door and this spirit. Okay, wish I had more time. I'm going to move on here. Those noises. Oh, I'm not driving. I just, this is the land of sounds. There's the trains, there's the cars, there's the cicada bugs. It's not quite time for cicada bugs, but they're really loud. If there's a lot of thunder and lightning, there's thunder and lightning. It's just the land of sound effects. It's always fun. Okay. Uh, so Veronica says, watching missing 411 videos on YouTube seems that there are still alien abductions. Well, he Doesn't say that it's alien abduction, but they are very weird in those situations that happen. Um, I wish he would take it maybe a little more conspiratorial, but I do also appreciate the fact that he is just um, reporting the facts and not putting his own spin on it. All right, so Terry says, "You gave me chills. That's exactly where we don't like to go." That's, what it's all about. All right, Gary, you know, I love doing this work, but sometimes people ask, Gary, this isn't, I'm not laughing at you. So here's Gary's question. Does Marshall have a place for homeless people to go to? I don't know. You can invite them to your house. I think Blind Dog and Liz are watching. You can have them go to their house. I don't want homeless people. I don't want homeless ghosts. No, thank you. Gary, I mean, if you really are asking that question in all honesty, I have no idea. Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's just comments, so Terry, as far as the ghost haunting thing, she felt that it was property as well. I totally agree. Claude said it's like everything are part to everything. Well, I mean, we are all interconnected in this thing we call life. Um, it just depends on how open you want to be to the different levels of life and living that there are on this planet. But for a long time, there was a lot of brainwashing that was going on telling us this is how reality is. And if you step outside the box, you are going to be identified as a heretic and, excommunicated from the church or from society. And I think we're just finally getting around that to seeing the reality that is that many cultures outside of the West already accept as being real and true. All right. Terry says, I actually got mad that I get woke up and yelled at it one night. Well, Terry, and that's really not a bad idea. All right. So my sister has a son who's autistic, and he would open these vortexes up to bring spirits in. So there was a spirit in the, like 4 foot plastic Santa that was in the hallway. And, so she called me up one day. She was like, hey, so and so is like standing there having this conversation with Santa. And I'm like, well, that's because, he brought a spirit in and it's in there. Well, then she had like 3 or 4 spirits hanging around the kid's bedroom, and there were multiple kids sharing a room. And so she would just go in, at 9 o'clock at night because none of her kids were in bed, and tell them that they needed to go. It was time for them to go to sleep, and they were welcome to come back in the morning. And you have the body, and I think that you can sit there and create some kind of ground rules for the spook that's haunting your backyard. All right, peace, Bradley. So Claude said, benevolence is up there. Mankind needs more to work on themselves in order to accept and adapt. Well, and I think with everything that's been going on, Claude, that people have really started to look into identifying what they value, what's important to them, and so people might not be 100% awake, but just the act of raising their awareness, turning off the autopilot for just a moment is a first step, and then it would give them the chance to work on themselves, work on their inner world that they maybe didn't even know they had. So, yeah, cool. Veronica again. Is my next door neighbor being haunted or just lying? So, Veronica, I'm going to make the assumption that your next door neighbor has some issues, and I'm definitely air quoting the issues. And so I'm going to say that it almost acts more like an entity issue. And it, correct me if I'm wrong, but have they complained about not just noises, but about like weird sexual stuff? Or would they not share that with you? Anyway, yeah. Claude says he's a proud heretic. Well, all of my friends are, and they're really good at it. It's really fun when you have a bunch, when the bulk of your friends are conspiracy theorists, anti UFOs, do the psychic thing, ghost hunting, all of this like weird alternative stuff, that the kinds of conversations you can have are wonderful because you can say like some of the weirdest stuff and other people get what you're saying and you don't have to sit and filter what's going on. um, and that's my world, and people go, oh well, I don't have anybody to talk to, or people that I can say this stuff to, and I'm like, wow, I have this like wonderful circle of friends where you can pretty much say anything and they don't look at you too weird. Hey, Miss Gina. So I only got 3 minutes left. So if you have like a really super quick question, I would love to answer it. Um, I know, Gina. That's why I love you so much. So Gina is the host of the Fox Den, and I don't know when it airs, but the Fox Den, she's on. You can find her on Facebook. Um, I would give you more of a pitch, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Anyway, well, there's 2 minutes left. Gina, I'm going to wind it up so I actually get done on time today. So before I go away, let me get my banners again. Ooh. So if you'd like to schedule a private consultation, please go to my webpage, soulhealer.com, and send me a message and we'll get something set up. Don't forget to like me on Facebook. That's Dr. Rita Louise on Facebook. Look for my bright smiling face, not the poodle in the tinfoil hat, which would be Rita Louise, but you want Dr. Rita Louise. And like that page, and it'll keep you up to date on all of the live streams that are coming up. But we air every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and 5 p.m. Pacific. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Just Energy Radio on YouTube, and one of the things that I saw was that it's very easy to access the archive. So if you miss a show, you can go to Just Energy Radio and check it out, but subscribe and like it and all that good YouTube stuff. Anyway, I'm going to go. I will be back here next Monday night to answer all of your burning questions. And I really appreciate all the questions that I had tonight. You guys were excellent. This was very fun. And I look forward to seeing you then. So until next time, I'm Dr. Louise. This is Monday Night Live.